Hi guys, today I'm going to tell the story of ANAIS NIN and how she inspired me to become a writer. So it happened very synchronistically. I was about 20 years old at university and I was studying, I don't know if I was already studying English literature, I think I was, and I came home at midday and turned on the TV and there was a midday movie on. It was Henry and June, and I'll talk about her book Henry and June in a moment too. But Henry and June is the story of how ANAIS Nin met Henry Miller, the writer of Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, and a few other books as well, a very celebrated writer, and his wife June as well. So when I started watching the film, then it was set in Paris in the 1920s, and it showed the way that Anais Nin lived. So she was married to a man, Hugo, who was a banker, but he was also quite artistic, having read her Journal of a Wife as well last year. She talks about how he is good at writing as well, but in the end he sacrificed his artistic leanings for being able to provide stability and support her and them and work in a bank. So he was working in the bank. They had lived, and I think they met in New York, and then they moved to Paris, and this was during the time that they were in Paris before the war broke out. And she met Henry Miller, and then they ended up having an affair, and then she also ended up having an affair with June, his wife. And in the book Henry and June, this is her journals and her Anais Nin's journals and her letters to Henry and June, detailing the story of their love affairs, to both of them. And it was more than just, it wasn't just sex, it was also like this artistic growth as well, and creativity that they shared, that June was more the muse, and Anais and Henry were the authors. And I just loved the way that she lived, and I wanted to live this way too, through the eyes of an artist or a writer, and experience life. So there were many quotes of hers that inspired me, and I know they inspire many people because I see them on Pinterest or on Instagram, like people living deeply have no fear of death. That was one that inspired me for many years. I had it written out and pinned up on my pin-up board for like at least 10 years. And then what are some of the other one? When you're something like, when you're pretending, your whole body revolts, and a lot of other I can't think of them right now, but maybe you know some and you can put it in the comments below. And then the other thing, I read this one, Delta of Venus and Little Birds, next after reading Henry and June. And Anais Nin is most famous for her journals. Then actually I found out, I didn't know this at the time, but I found out more recently that she actually self-published her books because she couldn't get a publisher. I think perhaps she wrote one book on D.H. Lawrence, and I don't know if that was self-published, but I think she self-published most of her books. And this one, I think, was one of, I love Delta of Venus and Little Birds. It's erotic fiction, and she wrote it at that time, the late 1920s, early 1930s, and it was like individual wealthy individuals would pay her or pay writers to write an erotic story. So I guess that was before pornography was around. And this is a collection of her short stories that she wrote for these under this erotic fiction genre. And yeah, they're really beautiful actually, and I love them. And I have read this book quite a few times. And she has, that's what she's famous for too, is like having her own, inventing her own kind of vocabulary to write about sensual things. I think that she is an erotic things. She's just a great example of like the female experience, and inventing a new kind of language and way to describe eroticism and sensuality. And they are quite seductive, or very seductive, and very erotic. And I find them a lot more erotic than, I don't know, pornography. So that's Delta of Venus and Little Birds. So that's another inspiration of ANAIS NINs to me. So I have also read another of her books, Cities of the Interiors. There are a few of her novels, and I found them quite hard to get into. I really wanted to enjoy them because I love her journals and her other books so much. But yeah, I carted that book around in Bali for a month and I didn't read it. So I tried to read it, but she's trying to change the form of the novel, I think, with those books. And so yeah, I just found them quite hard to read. So yes, so that is how ANAIS NIN inspired me. So at that point, I was 20, and then I took a creative writing class at university as part of the English literature part of my degree, and I enjoyed it, but I still didn't know how to write. I mean, not how to write, how to edit. I didn't know that most of the process is about the editing. So now what I do is I just write, and then after I have got that all out, I'll go back and I'll edit. So for example, when I was writing my last few books, I didn't even really look back. I didn't even read over it till I had finished the first draft. So that's just the way that I do it. And I know that many writers write in different ways, or there are kind of two main ways that I have heard of. So one way, when I went to the Writers' Festival one year, all the writers were talking about how they set it all out beforehand, how they plan it out, like what's going to happen. And I tried to write like that, and while I was writing my novel Wanderlust, and because of that, trying to do it that way, I couldn't write. I didn't write for a year because I couldn't do it that way. So the way that I write is much more, well, it is organic. So I'll just write and see what comes. So today I was working on a new book, and I just write, and then what comes out is like a mixture of fiction and reality, from what happened yesterday to what happened 5 years ago, and it all becomes mixed together like a dream, and I really love that process. So that's the way that I write. And then the next year that I went to the Writers' Festival, all the authors were talking about writing in the same way. And last year when I went to the Writers' Festival, it was just a small one here in Perth because they couldn't have international guests. Obviously, we've pretty much been in lockdown. Well, the state has been locked down. We haven't really been able to travel, to go overseas at all since COVID began, like at the beginning of 2020. And people haven't really been able to come into the state very much either. So we had the Writers' Festival last year, which was just pretty much, it was last year. There were actually 2 events on last year because they were quite small. But when I went to the one near the end of the year, the writers were talking about how they start with a feeling, and that's how I write as well. Like, there are some feelings that I want to express, and so then the story gets created around those feelings. So the feelings come first, and then I find the story. So I have been doing that now with this book that I'm working on, because it's a kind of mix of fiction and reality. auto-fiction, as I talked about in the last vlog number 2. So check that out if you're interested to know what auto-fiction is and where I discovered this and how I discovered it. So yes, if you would like to check that out, it's just called vlog 2, and this is vlog 3. So if you would like to hear more stories and more books that I love, then please like and subscribe and leave a comment below and let me know who your favorite author is or authors and who inspires you how to live. So is it ANAIS NIN like me, or is it another author or person? So yeah, let me know, and like and subscribe and share. I would be so grateful. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next vlog.